Talk about the Independent Press Standards Organisation and their view when it comes to, I have to say, the pressure, the regulation on journalists and editors to do such things as this. When a man is convicted of rape and then transitions to be a woman, IPSO say that they must then refer to that person as a she. And let me just read this to you. Even though most editors I spoke to, this is the person that was writing about this by way of a report, editors found it absurd to refer to, for instance, news reports including the surreal and scientifically inaccurate phrase, her penis. How on earth does this align with the accuracy that IPSO claim to prioritise? In other words, it's ridiculous, but IPSO, as an independent organisation, having been effectively, as it says here, influenced and captured by trans lobby groups, are insistent, apparently, that men that are rapists that transition to become trans women are called her, and that their genitalia be referred to as, for instance, her penis. Sorry to be so graphic, but I think I have to be to illustrate the nonsensical nature of this. Look, let's speak to Kevin Lister about this, spokesperson for Victims of Trans-Affirmative Activism. Kevin, what do you make of this nonsense?
You're right. It is nonsense. It is unbelievable nonsense, and it's almost more than nonsense. It is unmitigated evil. The fact that
you call it evil, evil.
It is evil. The fact that as a society that we can put a male rapist in a female prison, that is almost, you can hardly find the words to explain the madness of this. But I think, coming back to what I said, this is evil. And the reason that the trans movement has gained so much traction across all our institutions is that it is so evil that nobody wants to recognize how evil it actually is. It is taking experiments that were first conducted in Auschwitz by Dr. Josef Mengele and then bringing them into modern day society.
Yeah. So to be clear, this is the regulator of the press, so therefore the oversight of journalists and editors, effectively insisting on woke language. Now, some will laugh at this. I said at the beginning of this piece that this is ridiculous. It is, but it also has very, very sinister implications, Kevin, doesn't it? Because what we're effectively saying is that the country's press, the publication, the outlet of publications going to be read by Britain's millions and millions of news consumers, has to dictate effectively, for instance, that when the Spectator says that someone is a man that claims to be a woman, IPSO upheld a complaint against them for saying so. So what we're actually digesting here as a public is identity politics trans nonsense, but being mandated as such, so that the likes of the Sun, the Mirror, the Daily Mail and so on have to talk in such terms as her cervix and his penis. I mean, it is utterly ridiculous, isn't it?
It is absolutely appalling. So and your point is absolutely valid. So not only are all the institutions of this state captured by the trans ideology, but what we're now seeing is we can't even discuss it in the media. We can't say the truth that it's a man presenting as a female or a female presenting as a male. They are basic truths, and instead we are supposed to adopt without question the ideology and the language of the trans movement. It is unbelievable.
Yeah, let me just read what IPSO have said in response, I guess, for balance, although their statement that I'm about to read doesn't seem to bear reality in terms of the fact that, as I've just said, the Spectator had a complaint upheld against it because they talked about a transgender author that is, in their words, a man who claims to be a woman. But they say in their defence, this is a statement that certainly has appeared in the Times over the last 24 hours. A spokesman for IPSO said these claims relate to research commissioned by IPSO 6 years ago, which presents a range of views on reporting of gender and sex. IPSO has always been clear, wait for it, that the editor's code of practice does not specify appropriate or acceptable terminology. This is underlined in the refreshed guidance, blah, blah, blah. But that isn't correct, is it? That isn't true, because they are specifying what is correct, inverted commas, and what is not. So it looks like IPSO, I have to say, one hand doesn't know what the other one's doing there.
Exactly, and the situation that you just talked about with the Spectator magazine just completely highlights the absurdity. So, I can only come back to what I've said repeatedly, that this is a movement so evil that no one really wants to acknowledge how evil it is and how far our nation has sunk to become complicit with it.
Yeah. Well, we've talked a lot on this station. I've certainly, whenever I've done a show, we talk about the infiltration of the woke, the left, even the Marxist left, into many of our organisations across Britain, whether it be our education system, certainly our civil service, the higher reaches of our police and police authorities. It really is an issue, isn't it, that we've got a lot of unelected, unaccountable people that are of the left. And I guess that you'd have to make the argument that those in the public sector, I'm afraid, by matter of data and statistics, those in the public sector are more likely to be of a left-wing political persuasion. And what you get, particularly when you don't have particularly robust and gregarious principled politicians that are responsible for these bodies, so I guess this would be the Minister of Media and Sport, these civil servants that have infiltrated as activists these organisations are getting away with murder.
Correct. Getting away with murder is exactly the right terminology. This isn't just about people being forced to say the wrong things or the right things or whatever. This is about young people dying and, from suicide and the related side effects. It is murder. Your point before about the education being complicit or being driven by this and forced by this is absolutely right. There's a meeting that was held in July 2015 with civil servants in the DFE and the Department of Justice and so forth, when they were meeting with trans activists to work out how to bring the trans ideology into the classroom and how to enforce it.
Is that why we've now got drag queens twerking in front of 8-year-olds by way of some ridiculous forced education? I mean, my serious point generally, Kevin, is that if we become normalised to this rubbish, to this nonsense, by way of the press being told how they have to form a sentence around someone that's trans, where you can't say that a trans woman is really a man, which, by the way, they are, that normalisation does then translate into men that rape women, then that become that transition, or say they've transitioned, of course, because they can just say that, of course, particularly in places like Scotland. There are real world implications then. In other words, that you have people like Bryson, that criminal in Scotland that did exactly that, raped someone, was convicted, transitioned, and became a man in a wig in a Scottish female prison. You get then this normalisation of men pretending to be women in changing rooms that are inhabited by, for instance, my 3 teenage daughters. I mean, this normalisation is very dangerous indeed.
Correct, yeah. And the normalisation extends on to everything. If you can normalise the idea that a young person, a 16, 17-year-old female, can be in the wrong body, you can then normalise anything. You can normalise paedophilia in schools. And, no great surprise at the moment that we're starting to see all sorts of bizarre cases around the world where teachers are having completely inappropriate relationships with students. So everything goes. Once you allow this nonsense, then everything goes. And it's not just about changing a few words and forcing people to say things. As I said before, it is about young people absolutely being just having their life destroyed, having the bodies mutilated by drugs and by unnecessary surgery and so forth. And this is a movement, coming back to what you were saying before, that's pushed by the left. Primarily, we've got extreme left-wing ideologues working in public service and in the public services. So the whole thing is being adult-led, and the victims are children. And certainly from what I've seen in the education system is effectively acting like a recruitment agent.
Well, an encouragement, a proxy, an enabler of this rubbish. Are you concerned that from a political perspective that this government, I mean, still only 7 months in, but seems like 7 years, frankly, that their attitude to such things is going to make this whole thing worse? This
government is a complete catastrophe. We had years and years of waiting for the government guidance to come out on gender questioning children. It finally came out on the 19th of December, 2023, on the very day that I was put on the children's barred list for misgendering a child. And the first thing that this government have said is, well, we're not going to do anything further. We're not going to.
Kevin, honestly, right, look, Kevin, I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there because Ian Collins is in the studio waving at me saying, I want to speak, I want to speak. I mean, he's a man that, as we all know, we can't shut up. Kevin Lister, spokesperson for Victims of Trans-Affirmative Activism, keep up the good work.